In the last video, we were looking at VLOOKUP. If you haven't watched that video, you need to go back and actually watch it before watching this one. So in the last video, we talked about how to actually put in a VLOOKUP. And we made a comment over here towards the end of the video that if we typed in something like the name James, and there wasn't a name of James found in this search key, it was going to throw off NA, saying did not find James in the VLOOKUP equation. Which makes sense. There was no James over here, so how could they find a last name with that James? There was none. So I went ahead and manipulated this lot number, this basically selling data, to where we have 3 particular lots that didn't go through the sale. Let's say, for example, these 3 different lots didn't actually sell, nobody wanted to bid on them, so they never actually jotted down the buyer number or the price. So as a result, we wound up having an NA over here. Now, if you've got these NAs kind of dotting everything, first off, it makes your spreadsheet kind of look ugly. It doesn't look all that pretty. And then the second thing about it is you can't do equations whenever there's an NA on there. So say, for example, we say equals this cell plus this cell for whatever reason, and we drag it down, we now have an NA. That can often pose problems whenever you have this NA and you're trying to do equations. Plus, it just kind of makes your spreadsheet look ugly, like I mentioned earlier. Well, there is a formula in order to get around that. So we actually have to use 2 different formulas in conjunction with each other, and it's going to wind up being 3 different formulas all within the same cell. So the one formula that we are going to have to use that I'm introducing to you today is ISNA. ISNA. That is going to be the formula that you're going to use in order to kind of get away from these NAs. And what ISNA means is that if this says ISNA, then it's going to read it as true. And then we're going to use an if formula, an if-then formula. So equals IF. We're going to use this if formula in conjunction with this ISNA to kind of get rid of it all. So let's kind of see how this looks. So I'm going to kind of pick on this particular cell because it is an NA. So if we come in here and say equals ISNA, open parenthesis, and then close parenthesis over here, it's going to spit out a true. Now, if we come up here and we say ISNA, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, throws off a false. Well, as we know from an if-then statement, that if-then statements work off of is this true or is this false. So we can use an if statement in conjunction with an ISNA statement and this VLOOKUP formula in order to get rid of those NAs. So the way that we're going to do this is you got to kind of follow me on this logic. Is we're going to say if ISNA, if it's saying that this is true, in this case it's actually saying it's false because it's not producing an NA. So the way the ISNA works is it says that if this equation in here produces a non-applicable, it produces this hashtag or this # NA, then it becomes true. So it's basically saying if this is true, then what we want it to do is we want it to actually produce a quotation space in quotation. Now it's going to produce a blank cell. If it's saying that this should validate as it's going to populate as ISNA with just, or if it's going to produce a symbol of NA based off of just this equation, instead of it producing an NA, we want it to produce a blank. But if it's false, if this VLOOKUP formula right here actually produces a number, then we want it to actually produce that number still. So let's kind of see how that looks. So now, with this equation in there, what it's saying is if this particular formula produces an ISNA, then it's true. Or produces an NA, it's true, and we want it to leave a blank cell. But if this particular formula right here does not produce an NA, we want it to say that that's false, and we want it to produce actually populate this number, which it does. And as we drag it down, we now see that this cell still has the formula in there, but it's producing a blank cell. Because what it's saying right here is, if this particular equation produces an NA, so if that is true, then we want it to produce a blank cell. Well, we know that there is no 101 over here. If we look through this particular column, there is no 101. So therefore, this right here, this VLOOKUP, produces an NA, making this statement true, making us put that blank cell. Then we can actually drag that down. As we can see, none of the other cells are being affected, with the exception of the ones that originally had an NA in there. So let's go ahead and delete this, and we're going to go work through the whole process real quick. We're going to say equals if is NA. If what we're about to type in produces an NA, then put in one thing, put in whether or not it's true. If it's false, we'll put in something else. So we're going to say if the following equation of VLOOKUP, open parenthesis, this search key, the range, remember we want to lock in that range, we want to tell it which column pull from. In this case it's going to be 4. We're going to say false. If that equation right there produces an NA, then we want it to say, sorry about that, let's retype it all in real quick. If I pressed escape and it kind of got rid of what I was typing in. If you ever catch yourself typing in a formula that's wrong, or you click on something that's not quite right, like you've been seeing me kind of do periodically through this video, just press escape. It'll kind of put that formula back to the original status the way it was. So we're going to say if we can find cell 100, comma, out of this range, we're going to lock in that range. We're wanting to pull out of index 4. We're going to say false because it is not sorted. Close parenthesis. If this is true, if this produces an NA in there, we want it to actually produce a blank cell. But if it's false, do we want to type in this actual VLOOKUP deal that we're kind of dealing with? Search key of there, range of the same range, we're going to lock in that range, column 4, again we're going to make sure that it is not sorted, and just close off our parentheses and we say enter. Then we can drag that particular formula down, and it leaves everything else the same but those blank cells. So if you ever get into a scenario where you're using VLOOKUP or any other formula where it starts producing this NA, this non-applicable, meaning that it's not there, then we're actually going to use this ISNA formula in order to produce a blank cell right there. So something to keep in mind, that if you are doing this, let's say for example we don't have this ISNA in here, we have just VLOOKUP, just like we did originally from the get-go, and we want to add that ISNA. You type in if, open parenthesis, ISNA, open parenthesis, and then go ahead and highlight this. Press Control C or Command C, be Control C on a PC or a Windows, be Command C on an Apple. Then you do open parenthesis, open quotation, close quotation, sorry, we gotta actually put in a parenthesis right here to match up all of our parentheses. And then we copied that VLOOKUP formula. Now you just press Control V. And there's your formula again. Add one more parenthesis to add it all off. And press Enter. And you have now successfully used the if statement and the ISNA to get rid of those NA ugly cells in your spreadsheet.